Alrighty, CNT140, we are working on our patch cable lab. First thing, do make sure you download a copy of the lab for yourself, maybe save it on your desktop, something like that. You'll need that for at least the color codes, but there are directions in there kind of step by step on what I'm doing that's going to help you as well. So do that, and once you've done that, we'll get our supplies out that we need. So I've gotten the following things out of my toolkit. I will need my crimper, so I have that out. I will need the electrician scissors to trim my wires to length. I'll need my jacket stripper, insulation jacket stripper. I will eventually need my meter. And then out of my toolkit, there is a container of RJ45 jacks. I'll need just a couple out of there. And you notice if your container's like mine, once I open it, it's going to kind of spill out. So if you have like a Ziploc or something at home for these, that would be awesome. That would be a huge help to me. Just put the whole bag in there. That way they don't spill over the toolkit. So I need those. And then I also need out of my supply bag, I'll need my piece of stranded UTP cable. In your supply bag, you had the blue cabling that we used in the last lab to terminate the outlet. That was the solid core conductor. We now need the piece of stranded core conductor. And if you actually look at the jacket label, you actually see that it does say patch cable. This is a stranded core conductor designed to be used as a patch cable. So we need this. So now that we have all of our supplies out, we can get ready to make our cable. Now, for our lab, for me, you need to make at least one working patch cable. It's up to you. You can take this whole cable and terminate it, make it into it's about a 10-foot cable, and you're welcome to use this at home, for your computer, PlayStation, whatever you got. If it would be more helpful for you at home to have two shorter patch cables, feel free to cut this in half and just terminate it into two cables and use both at home. That's fine. And one last side note, since there are extra connectors in here, if you want to make another cable or two for yourself, you can buy this at a place like Home Depot or Lowe's. Just make sure it is the stranded conductor patch cable. So if you wanted to buy another length of this and terminate another long cable or two for use at your home, feel free. You have all the tools to do so. Okay, now that I have my tools out, I'm going to kind of clear my work area just a little bit so I have a little room to work. I'm going to leave just one or two tools here handy that I need. All right. So to start, now I terminated one end previously. That way when I'm done with this end, I can connect it into the meter. But we'll start with this end right here. This one I have not terminated yet. If need be, trim the end square in case it was ragged for any reason. If need be, do that. And then we're going to strip about an inch and a half of insulation off the end. So I'm going to use my jacket stripper again. Remember, label up, and we're going to give it a spin or two around. Now, this tends to be very flexible, so you might need to give it an extra spin or two to actually cut through the insulation, okay? Once I've done that, if I bend it, I should hopefully see, there we go, it starts to open up for me a little bit. Just give it a little bend, and that should be enough that I can now pull the insulation off, okay? All right, now that I have that, if you look in your lab, there's the color code printed. We're going to use the 568B color code. So I'm going to get my wires, and I'm going to lay them in color code order. Now, before I do anything, you'll notice I haven't done anything with my wires yet. If I carefully rotate my cable until the orange wire is on the left, I will notice that the brown wire is on the right, and the blue and green are in the middle. That's did on purpose, if you will. Our color code is aimed around this. So if I just turn my cable, the orange is on one side, brown is the other, and the blue-green's in the middle, just like I need them. So now that I've done that, again, just rotate your cable so it's like that. Now that I've done that, I can carefully untwist my pairs and start getting them into my 568B color code order. Okay, I'm trying my best to do this where my hand stays out of the way. There we go. Now, these are stranded core conductors, so they're going to act like little wet noodles on you. So you just have to have a little patience on this one. So I have my white, orange, orange. I now need my white, green, blue. And I need to do it this way. It's kind of hard to do with the camera right in my face. I have the camera right between me and the wires. So there we go. White, orange, orange. White, green. Blue, white, blue, green. White, brown, brown. They are in rough color code order right now. White, orange, orange. White, green, blue. White, blue, green. White, brown, brown. Perfect. The next thing we need to do is we need to flatten these wires out so they'll fit into my connector. We'll then need to trim them to length so they fit in the connector, then crimp. All right, so the first thing, let's flatten these out to get them nice and straight to fit in the connector. Now, I've seen this done a couple different ways, so you'll need to find the way that works for you. I've seen people lay it down and smooth them out with their fingers. That works for some people. I've also seen people take, and it's almost like they make waves with it, and bend these up and down this way, and almost like you're doing the whole parachute when you were a kid. You had the parachute that you put balls on in elementary school, and you bounce it up and down. If you kind of do waves like that with the wires, sometimes that helps straighten them out. The way that works for me is, if you remember, maybe as a kid, you take a rope or a jump rope on the ground and wiggle it back and forth to make it look like a snake. That's the way that works for me. So I'm going to take these wires and I'm going to kind of pinch here in color code order, almost like I'm holding a hand of cards if I were playing a card game. I'm going to pinch them there so they stay in color code order. Then I'm going to kind of bundle these up here, and I'm going to wiggle side to side as I pull out. And actually, oops, I bumped the camera there. After about 2 or 3 times, you see they're starting to straighten out. And I'm actually going to... go. I actually use this hand here to keep them in color code order and my thumb on, and then I wiggle this way and kind of pull, and you see I'm getting them straightened out right next to each other because I need that to be able to fit it into the connector. Okay, so I'm going to pause. White, orange, orange, white, green, blue, white, blue, green, white, brown, brown. I'm like triple checking that they are in color code order. And again, the lab has pictures of the color code for you. So use those or what I'm telling you, whatever one's going to help you. Now that I have them flatten out and straighten out, they should be able to fit in my connector. But I now need to trim these wires so they fit into the connector. All right. You don't want to do this. Don't let go of these wires now that you have an order. But I'm going to because I need to show you something. So I'm going to lay down my wire. Oops, it fell on the floor. I was trying to use my crimper to hold it. There we go, that'll work now. So I need to make sure that the little wires get to the end of the connector. If you can see in there, I just took a scrap piece of wire. See how it needs to make it the whole way to the end, that once I crimp, these little brass pins actually force their way up in and make contact with the wire here. They actually cut through the insulation and make contact with the copper wire inside. So I need to make sure these go the whole way to the end. In addition, I need to make sure the jacket insulation, it needs to make it into the connector far enough that when I crimp, there's a little triangle here, a plastic triangle, that's going to grab a hold of the jacket so it can't pull out. So I need to make sure both of those dimensions occur. That when I'm done, I should have... Let me grab my cable here. I should have the following 2 things occur. This little triangle is grabbing a hold of the insulation, and these little wires have made it to the end, that the little brass pins have gone up through, pierced the insulation, and made contact with the conductor inside. So I need to make sure both of those dimensions are correct. So to do that, I'm going to grab my wire again. All right, I got to get them back in color code order. White, orange, orange, white, green, blue, white, blue, green, white, brown, brown. There we go. We're back in color code order. I'm going to take my connector, lay it next to the cable, and I'm going to kind of eyeball about how far I need to cut the wires off. And I'm going to cut right about here. I'm going to cut those wires off, and I'm going to give you 2 tips. One is, if I cut them too long, I can always cut more off. Easy peasy. Secondly, if I cut them just a little long, they tend to work out just right. Because these are stranded wires, and they tend to like slop around like little wet noodles. So if I make them just a little long, when I slide them in, they tend to like shrink back a little bit. They'll be just right, okay? So I'm going to eyeball that distance, and I know for me, if I cut right about where my finger is, I'm good. I know from doing this a few times. I now need to take my electrician scissors, and I need to cut straight across. I don't want to cut in an angle, because if I cut in an angle, this wire will make it to the end of the connector, and this one won't. So I need to make sure that they are straight across. So I'm going to trim them straight across. Nice square angle here. Okay. I'm now going to take my connector, clicky tab down. That's the technical name. Clicky tab down. And I'm going to feed them in with my white orange wire on the left and my brown wire on the right. And these wires need to go into, there's a channel for each wire in there. There's a channel for each wire. They each need to go into their own channel. And I'm going to slide them in. And I'm going to give it a little wiggle to make sure that these wires are making to the end of the connector. And the jacket is making it in far enough that it'll get crimped. So I'm going to take a look. I'm actually going to look around at all sides, and I'm trying to see all the colors get to the end, and I'm trying to make sure my insulation gets in there far enough to be crimped. If things don't look right now, pull it out, trim it off, reseat it, or redo the end before you crimp. Because once it's crimped, there is no going back. I have to cut it off and start over. Okay? So make sure things look okay. If they do, now I'm ready to crimp. And it's no harm to like pull it out and trim it off or start over. But once it's crimped, you're done. So now that I have all those dimensions right, I'm going to grab my crimper. And this time I'm going to use the 8P slot, 8 position slot. This one right here, the larger one. And my connector is going to fit in with the little clicky tab, or I should say the clicky tab lined up with that notch, if you will. That's going to slide in. It actually does not click in, it just slides in. So I'm going to slide it in and I'm going to hold in. I'm actually holding in with pressure on the green cable here to make sure it does not slide out. And I'm going to give it a crimp. Now you'll notice if I stop part way, the little ratchet mechanism here is holding it because it's like, no, you haven't gone far enough. So I'm going to need to give it a little squeeze. I need to make sure I use a little bit of muscle here. I'm going to squeeze it. Once I've squeezed it far enough, that ratchet mechanism here will open. There we go. And it'll let me take the connector out. Okay? So there is my crimp. And if I take a look at it, I see the little plastic triangle is grab and hold the insulation. And I see the brass pins have been forced up into the wire, cut through the insulation, make contact with the wire inside. So I have a good crimp. What I'm able to do now, you'll repeat that for the other end of the cable. Same color code, same way. And once I have both ends crimped, I'm now able to, let me get some of my scraps out of the way, there we go. I'm now able to hook it up to my cable meter. One end will go into one end of the meter, the other end's going to click into the other end of the meter. Boop. Okay, make sure they're clicked in. I'm going to lay both ends next to each other. I'm going to hit the test button right here, and I'm going to look for 4 green lights. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So if for any reason I get another light combination here, we'll need to find out which end needs to be kind of cut off and re-terminated. If I get any combination here that something's not lit up or I see a miswire, reversal, anything like that, I need to find the end that's not right, cut it off, and re-terminate. So look for one that's not in the correct color code order. If you find it, cut it off, re-terminate, make sure it's in the right order, and then you're looking for that. If you're having trouble getting it right, use our Zoom session. Show me your cable, and I can try to help figure out which end to re-terminate. All right, let's say we have everything right now. If I do, what you're going to do is take a picture of this for me so I can see your cable connected to the meter and I see a good test result. Take a picture of that and submit that to D2L, and that'll get you credit for doing your patch cable termination. There is a couple questions to answer at the end of the lab. Submit those as well, and then you will have your patch cable lab done.